Thank you, Nick, and thank you for your leadership. Social innovation and social entrepreneurship is exactly what we need at this time in our country and in the world. So we really appreciate all that you've done for years in leading regionally and nationally in this endeavor. What we have put together today is a conversation with some amazing authors, and hopefully you've had a chance to look through this edition of the journal and been able to prioritize a little bit of your time to read through and hear a little bit from a variety of authors. And I'm going to turn it over to Katrina to really set up the stage for what's going on. But just to give you a small, quick background, Catalyst at Penn GSE is our Center for Global Education, Innovation, and Impact. We bring people and ideas together to move education forward in a variety of novel and meaningful ways. And now we really are excited about the prospects and possibilities of AI because we work at the nexus of business, technology, and education. We think we need all of those. We absolutely need the fundamentals and foundational research and knowledge of education, but we also need to have viable business models to make things scalable, and we need the use of technology to make them efficient and capable of being sustainable over time. And so a conversation about the future of AI in education is very, very appropriate at this time, how we leverage some of these tools and leverage AI as a tool as we think about the possibilities, the promise, and the peril that AI can bring. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my amazing colleague, Katrina Struloff, to give you an overview of what these authors have put together and set the stage for our conversation today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We're about to dive into this really exciting collection of papers that explore a lot of how AI is cutting edge in education, how it's being currently used, and how it can continue to push those boundaries. And I want to highlight in education, we're also speaking about lifelong learning, not just in a traditional K-12 spaces, but in workplaces, in higher ed, and the PK-12 and home learning as well. So today you'll hear a snapshot of a very dynamic and rapidly evolving field, as you all know. And these authors have tackled the diverse aspects of AI from its impact on student agency and practical tools, and to those that are being developed with teachers. Each paper offers a very different glimpse of potential and complexities of integrating AI into education. And we're really excited about this. I want to highlight a few key themes and insights before we get started that you can keep in the back of your mind, especially as we go into the portion after our author speaks. You can go into breakout rooms and dig into these topics. The first is that there's really a lot of conversation on student-centered learning and agency, and we really want to highlight how AI can foster student-centered learning. We have examples of how AI is creating adaptive learning pathways, personalized career development, and interactive stories to engage students in real-world problems. Also, we have teacher support innovation as one of our key themes. And that is really looking at how there's a strong emphasis on how AI can support teachers. That AI is not replacing teachers by any means, but it's about supporting teachers when it comes to tools for lesson planning, evaluation, rubric generation, and even freeing up ways that educators can focus on really doing what they do best, which is the teaching, mentoring of young minds. And we're really inspired to see how this technology has been levered to make teachers' lives easier and more effective. And then there's also a key theme of critical thinking and AI literacy. And this is really important when we think of how AI supports and doesn't undermine critical thinking. A handful of our papers really address the potential bias in AI tools and how we need to implement carefully and smartly as we move forward, and that we can do this thoughtfully and ethically. Also, we have the theme of practical application of tools. That's one of the things I love about the style of this journal. It is really about how do we apply things in the real world rather than sitting in just an academic space. And so there's some great tools that are highlighted in this edition, including interactive lesson starters, AI teaching assistants, and really how we can see these elements moving forward in education, like I said, across the full P20 spectrum. And then finally, research and evaluation. We have some great empirical articles in here that are highlighting how the impacts of AI tools happen on engagement, learning outcomes, and even some creative ideation. So we can make sure that we're having a data-driven approach. So as we move forward, I want to make sure that we're really focusing in on those themes, but that we're sharing the insights of how we can really take this incredible insight and navigate forward in this new era of AI that's changing every day. I'm left with many questions reading these articles, and that's the best thing, right? Like this is about critical thinking and conversation. So we really invite you into that today. And we believe that all these conversations in the papers can be incredibly fruitful moving forward and in this moment. So let's just move on to the next phase of our event as we engage with our brilliant authors directly. I know you probably have many questions you'd like to ask, but we're first going to let each of our authors give a 2 to 4 minute recap of their article, and we'll call on you so we can make sure we have some order and semblance in the room. And then we'll move forward to discussion beyond that. So Michael, I'll hand it back over to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Katrina. We'll keep those ideas and themes in mind. And to kick us off, I think the very first speaker of all our authors is Alex Cotran, who's going to talk about building a shared framework for AI readiness. Welcome, Alex.
Hey, Michael. Nice to see you again. As always. So, yes, I think with only 2 minutes, I'm going to be very focused in my comments. In the education space, there's like a lot of exuberance about artificial intelligence. And most of the conversation seems to be focused on like how do we use AI as a opportunity for us to enhance teaching and learning, to deploy AI in education to help students learn and improve outcomes and help teachers teach. And I really don't think that's the big thing. I think the big thing is the fact that every other industry in the world is also doing that. And it's going to change the skills that are going to add value in the labor market, because it is not simply the case that if AI lowers, I mean, I heard someone say there was a large technology provider was talking about, well, AI is going to lower the barrier to entry for people to do things like writing code, and that's going to democratize access to people to be software engineers. And what's missing from that is when you lower the barrier to entry for someone to write code, you're also lowering the incremental value of that expertise. And like David Autor talks about this, right? Like why do we pay air traffic controllers more than crosswalk coordinators? They're both obviously really important societal values, or value adds to society. We don't want our kids to get run over in the crosswalk, and yet an air traffic controller makes about three times as much. And the answer is because it's a lot harder to become an air traffic controller. And so part of what is so critical and at the crux of AI readiness is not just, it's not AI literacy. It is different than AI literacy. It is what are the skills that students are going to need to add to go beyond just their ability to use the AI. And I think like also an instructive and so in the article, we talk about, the sort of the requisite components of AI readiness. And really a lot of this is built off of work that organizations like Digital Promise and America Succeeds, and like if we think about the durable skills framework, it's not novel. But the way to think about, another frame I use is if you go back to like the late 90s and imagine if someone were to say, the key to thriving in the future in the 21st century is keyboard literacy, mobile phone literacy, computer literacy. We need people that can use technology. And obviously in retrospect, that's not right. Obviously, like using your phones is necessary condition to operating in the world, but nobody's going to hire you because you can use your phone. You'd be laughed out of an interview if you tried to say, well, I'm really good at using Google search, or I'm really good at, typing on a keyboard. It's like, well, yes, but how do you apply your ability to use that technology in specific ways that to solve problems, to accomplish things? And so I was talking to a school leader, and I'll close with this. And this school leader was asking me, what are AI skills? We're trying to figure out how do we teach AI skills? And my response was twofold. One, your students don't need to be taught AI skills. Like you need to learn how to use AI from your students. They are unquestionably further ahead than you are on things like prompt engineering and using whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. So getting out of that paradigm. But two, AI skills is actually just math. It's English, it's science, it's social studies, ability to read and write and communicate. Um, and I think it's important that we don't lose sight of that. We don't lose sight of the fact that education, the core focus of education, actually probably doesn't change very much. Um, and we know this because if you look at the uses of AI in the real world, the best users of AI tools are people that already have the underlying expertise, whether it's in coding or finance or otherwise. Anyways, that's my TED talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. And there'll be more time, like I said, to dig in these breakout rooms. So just a reminder, authors, we can have that time to really dig into the questions that will be emerging and some of our other thoughts we didn't get to share in the publication. So next up, I want to tag Tyler Thigpen. Share his.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. My name is Tyler Thigpen, and I'm based south of Atlanta, Georgia, in the southeastern corner of the United States. And I lead a nonprofit that has two micro schools, one that's in person, one that's online. And I also lead the Institute for Self-Directed Learning. My article, and I welcome your feedback. It's called Harnessing Generative AI for Self-Directed Learning: Innovations and Implications. And in this article, I explore how generative AI is fundamentally reshaping the landscape of education. And a summary might be AI can help us create the conditions for learners leading their learning, adults guiding, and AI supporting. So really, I explore how AI can help personalize instruction, but also amplify student agency and reimagine the role of educators. And so I draw on a few real world experiments from our own schools, which are self-directed, and as well as some other schools, and share stories and benefits of how AI can help foster self-directed learning and help students set goals and reflect on their progress and move at their own pace, get adaptive feedback, and through Socratic prompting. But I also caution about some of the risks in my article, over-reliance on AI from educators and from learners. I address some equity gaps that we might consider, and I also address some ethical concerns, some of which Alex and others have named. But then I really talk about, for leaders especially, a process whereby they can think through how to meaningfully articulate and think through what their approach to AI would be at the systems level. And I'm dropping in the chat here, but basically guiding leaders to think through the integration of AI at these different components of a school model, from curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment, schedules, routines, roles development and management model, and so on and so forth. And I teach the leadership track of the Introduction to Teaching with AI course here at Penn. And in my experience, as leaders have gone through this and thought through how AI is having positive or potentially negative ripple effects in their system, it's been really beneficial for them. And so my article basically makes the case that AI isn't just a technical upgrade, but a paradigm shift. And that if we wield it wisely, it could help us finally sort of break through from the one size fits all schooling model and instead empower learners to chart their own path with confidence and purpose. So I hope you read it, and I welcome your feedback. Thank you.
Great, and you can talk to Tyler in one of the breakouts in a few minutes. Now I'm excited to introduce Jeremy Rochelle, whose article, along with some others, is called Generative AI Unlocks the Power of Interactive Storytelling for Science Teachers and Learners.
Thanks, Michael. And well, this is Meet the Authors. So let me say hi first. I lead a research group, Learning Sciences Research at Digital Promise. We're a national nonprofit that works with innovative schools across the country. And oddly enough, I've always gray in my beard. I was an MIT student in the 1980s, an undergraduate, and I kind of hung around this thing called the AI Lab in Tech Square. And Marvin Minsky and Seymour Papert were doing stuff. And I kind of caught the bug and never lost it, although I found like I care more about people than machines. So I'm more of a learning scientist than an AI scientist. But that's who I am. Let me talk about our paper for just 1 minute. I'll just share one idea. what's the most basic way that humans support each other in learning? The most basic, well, we tell stories. And stories are so fundamental to human learning, and AI is an amazing story generating machine. So what our paper is about is how could we empower teachers, for example, teachers in science classrooms, to just with typing at a prompt, be able to create interactive stories that turn their kids on to the real conceptual depth of science and get them excited about pursuing science. How can they make custom stories where they're in the loop and they can control the story to the degree they want to? That's what our paper's about. It's about AI as lowering the barrier for teachers to be able to produce stories that both engage their students and drive cognition forward. Look forward to talking to you later.
I was gonna say this might be a moment when I need AI. I have too many screens and not enough happening. Um, thank you for that, Jeremy. We're looking forward to that breakout later. Next up, we have the article titled Mathematics Teachers' Use of Generative AI to Create Active Learning Experiences. And Katie Bainbridge, would you mind taking over?
Yeah. So our paper, I think, leans into the aspect of sort of supplementing what a teacher does rather than replacing what a teacher does, and using AI to sort of make the job of being a teacher more of the good parts and less of the less fun parts. And so we were conducting interviews with teachers on using 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 LLMs to create active learning exercises for a math class. And we are at now like acting on that research to develop a tool that will sort of create exercises and materials for those exercises with a little prompting from the teacher. So that's the angle we're coming at this from, is teacher in the loop, facilitating instead of replacing, and not really on that student facing side of things.
Great. Thanks, Katie. The next article, unfortunately, Amy Storniola and Robert Jean LeBlanc can't be here, but the article that Nicolas will put in the chat is Reimagining Writing Assignments in the Age of Gen AI. And it's a guide to ways writing prompts can support the pedagogy, what AI prompts can support the pedagogy of writing. So please take a look at that. But it's now my pleasure to introduce Ray Lader, Democratizing Career Development, Leveraging AI for Personalized Learning.
Thank you. Yep, my name's Ray Lader, he, him pronouns. I'm here to talk a little bit about a more practical approach. So it's really looking at how can you use AI to enhance some of the things that you're doing and to make sure that there's still a human, people-centered approach in the work. So wrote from a space of looking at how to take a program for career development and having the opportunity to scale it globally. How do you use AI so that folks can engage in an individual way using tools that often are low or no cost and easily available, and making sure that there's still a tie in it so that folks can engage at a deeper level to get that personal aspect needed across multiple spaces when we have limited funds and resources. Probably one of the unicorns in the space in that I'm currently working in corporate, but I used to work in higher education for more than 13 years. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all.
Thank you, Ray. Next up, we have Fran Newberg, who is with the School District of Philadelphia, and she'll be highlighting her article, Navigating AI and the Vision for the Future of the School District of Philadelphia.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. I am a teacher, elementary school teacher, middle school teacher. I was a middle school administrator and came to the world of educational technology a long time ago, when the state was exploring integrating technology into classrooms. And my article focuses on how do we navigate and bring a system forward in the use of AI. I'm interested in all of your backgrounds, and anyone that has a background in K-12. K-12 is a beast to change. Just think about any of your elementary school teachers. Some of them do the same things for 20 and 30 years. So the article chronicles how we developed a shared vision. We took a long time to have a cross-functional stakeholder groups, teachers, parents, high school students, central office administrators to develop an AI use continuum. And it talks about the partners that we brought along with us, the International Society of Technology and Education. We are working with the University of Pennsylvania. I mean, it really does take a village to move a district. We're the 8th largest school district in the country. We have about 10,000 teachers, about 5,000 administrators. And what are the type of guidelines that can persuade all of them to learn about AI? And we're getting very interesting feedback from the teachers. And we're talking about the professional development that we're offering and how can we slowly move the needle with some teachers that are very reluctant and some teachers that are very excited. And as I close, I'll share that we're very grounded in data privacy and network security, something that really wasn't at the forefront 5-10 years ago. But with all of the cybersecurity risks, all of the data privacy leaks, the way data is misused, that leads the charge for us. So not only is my article talking about how we're implementing AI across the school district and the system, we are also at the same time trying to educate our teachers and administrators around the risks, the promise, and issues with data privacy and network security. So I look forward to talking to more of you later. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Fran. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Will Krasnow, leveraging AI to streamline teacher evaluations and empower educators.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Will. I am actually a senior at the University of Pennsylvania. I'll be graduating in a couple days. And the reason that I'm here is a man named Matt Kelly and a lady named Kelly Espinoza. So my work started about a year ago when I met Matt Kelly, who I believe will be signing on here at some point. I'm not sure if he's here now. And he, for many years, was a program director for the Philadelphia Academy of School Leaders. And this, for those who don't know, is funded by the Neubauer Foundation and helps support school leaders across Philadelphia. And a recurring problem he found over and over and over again, which is my evaluations are taking way too long for my teachers and yielding not enough squeeze, not enough juice for my squeeze. And they're often in this realm of compliance. And so what he did is he built a tool on PlayLab that was called the Danielson Evaluation Generator that was used by hundreds of school leaders across the country to help return time to principals and help focus their work on the important parts of teacher professional development, which is spending time in person, helping teachers grow, which is providing more teacher improvement plans. Now, Matt is now the CEO of Independence Charter Schools here in Philly. And in his transition, what we worked on together was building Eval by SwiftScore, which is essentially filling in the cracks of what that initial PlayLab tool provided. And what we found is there are three remaining problems. One is that the evaluations were good, but they weren't perfect. Two is, just like Fran said, what's the deal with my data and I'm putting into the platform? And three is, at the end of the day, my evaluations are often still stuffed away in some spreadsheet somewhere or deep in PowerSchool. So what we ended up building was a secure software environment that's fine-tuned to specific evaluation frameworks. So for instance, we are working with the World Bank to refine evaluations to match their TEACH framework. We're also working with many districts and schools for their own, Danielson or whatever they may use. The second thing is ensuring that our security and privacy is top notch and that anything that is put into the system that's sensitive actually never makes it to AI. And I could talk about that another time and how we were able to build that system. And then the third is data analysis. You know, how can we link up AI to secure data, but the data about teacher improvement and growth? So a principal can now answer the question, you know, what's the next step for my teacher based on the evaluations of this entire year? How can I help this high achieving teacher get to the next level? What's the trend across my school based on all the evaluation data that my APs, SBTLs, the PLS that came from over there? How do I sync that all together and have an insight that can actually drive instructional practice? And since the development of eval, it's been a really wonderful process. We are working now with school leaders across the country, including the Neubauer Fellows. Those actually in Ohio, we were just with Penn GSE's John Gamba and Jason Green, which I believe has an article here talking about AI and bringing that tool beyond, and also New York City Public Schools. Excited to talk about it more. If anyone is interested in our website, I will drop that in the chat. And I will also drop my calendar link if anyone's open to talking. I clearly am not an educator. I am 22 years old, so I appreciate any thoughts, feedback. I've never created a teacher evaluation in my life. So please, I'm excited to talk and meet you all. Thank you very much, Michael.
But in 1 week, you'll be a college grad.
Yes, I'm very excited.
Congratulations, Will.
Congratulations.
Incoming. And I mean, I would argue that we're all educators, just in different spaces, in different ways. And you teed up Jason great to talk about his article, which is leveraging AI to help school systems innovate for scale and sustained impact. So I will hand it over to you, Jason.
All right. Thank you so much, Katrina. And thank you, Will. So hi, everyone. My name is Jason Green. I'm co-founder and president of an organization called Your Way Learning. I'm also the co-author of a book called Blended Learning in Action. My article, I actually want to start with a quick story from my article, and that is about 3 months ago, I was in a meeting with the leadership team from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. About 10 minutes into the meeting, the chief academic officer got an urgent text, and she had to, about a security issue at a school, so she had to flee the meeting. About 5 minutes later, the deputy superintendent of schools also got the same text, had to leave the meeting. So we were left in this meeting with just our team and the CIO. And I fully expected for the meeting to be over. We have to reschedule. We have to, it'll be months before we reschedule. But something very different happened, and that was the meeting continued. The CIO actually had the information he needed to really represent the team. The meeting actually ended up being extremely productive. And what would have been a waste of time for everybody actually became a very interesting learning experience for me, because what it showed was this was a district where there was enough culture built, enough trust, and enough clarity of the strategic objectives of the district, where even without the instructional leads there, the meeting continued. I was intrigued by that because so much of my work in working with school systems is around culture. So this isn't actually an AI first conversation. It's actually about how culture, pedagogy, and capacity building, when effectively merged with AI, can actually create scalable change. So in the article, I actually used 3 case studies of real districts that we're working with. I talk about the pedagogy in a school system in Brooklyn, Brooklyn North High Schools, and working with a superintendent there who has a very specific pedagogical vision to shift her classrooms from lecture to student-centered learning. And we're actually working with this superintendent to build custom AI tools in Your Way aligned to her pedagogical vision. And so now that superintendent is actually seeing results in literally sometimes days that she didn't see in years. The second example that I use, case study, is Anne Arundel. We're working with Anne Arundel County that has a very specific challenge around how to support their middle school intervention programs. And they're actually using Your Way to actually build middle school focused interventions that are now custom to their Maryland standards, to their intervention needs. And it's part of their kind of innovative culture that's now blending with the Your Way tool. And the third example that I use is a school system in New Hampshire, Nashua, that's using Your Way to do capacity building. So they're actually using AI to now build the skills of their teachers to deliver more personalized learning, more student-centered learning, and it's part of now their capacity building vision for their school system. So at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that all the AI hype is not just around technology, it's actually around people and how people use AI to drive real system change. And that's what the article really focuses on, is the people in the loop that are using Your Way as a platform. And we're learning how now AI is actually shifting systems at scale. So similarly, I'll put my information in the message, in the chat, and I'm excited about this conversation and continuing to learn with all of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jason. I'm going to move on now. Leif Espenshade is going to talk about his article with some others, the rubric generation in colleague AI, transforming assessment and education.
I should probably unmute myself. Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm the Assistant Director of Research and Technology Development at the Amplify Learn AI Center at the University of Washington. I just wanted to say our paper's lead author, Victor Chian, is an awesome grad student here at UW, and he's currently overseas where it's about 3 a.m., so I'm presenting in his place. Educational assessment, it faces persistent challenges in the classroom in creating objective, standards-aligned grades for students that are fair, that are transparent, and give students good feedback that they can use to improve their learning. And it's really hard to do that in a time-efficient way for teachers. Standards-based grading and rubric-based grading can address these challenges, but the traditional approach to it is extremely time-intensive. So the Colleague AI platform is a spin-off tech platform that we've been developing, and in it we have added a rubric generation function that uses RAG technology with large language models. It accesses established frameworks like Common Core State Standards, Next Generation Science Standards, to create customizable grading rubrics for teachers to use in their classroom assessments that are individually, uniquely adapted to their specific classroom. So we're using a user-centered approach in designing the system where teachers can input assessment details. They can actually just upload their assessment if they want, or they can tell the AI system about it. They tell the system their learning objectives, their preferred grading scales. We support common grading scales like depth of knowledge and a number of others, or we let users define their own scale. Our AI then generates a standards-aligned rubric that teachers can edit and refine. It's really important to us that our platform foregrounds teacher control. All of our AI-generated content is immediately editable by teachers. So they're not getting a PDF of a rubric that they can't change, they're getting a doc that they can freely edit any part of. We've then taken the next step and created an AI grading pipeline, whereby the teacher can attach their rubric to an assessment and have their students turn in the assessment on our online platform. And the AI can prepare preliminary student feedback. Teachers can choose if they want to let their students directly access this feedback for formative assessments, but final grades are always assigned by a teacher. We're developing this AI grading part of the implementation and ongoing co-design with classroom teachers. And we're getting lots of really great feedback about it. So with this new functionality of AI generated rubrics, we can improve assessment practices. We're automating sort of the routine task of making a rubric. We're making it customized generation, just far more accessible to teachers, and ideally freeing up teacher time to focus more on their, instruction and relationships with students and student engagement. The system's, natively multilingual with about 50 languages supported. And it can handle images, it can handle documents, it can handle pictures of student handwriting. So it's very accessible across educational settings, as long as you have an internet connection. Our future development is focused on expanding the quality of coverage across subjects. Some of our teacher feedback is from technology teachers who are having their students write Arduino scripts, and we definitely got to we hadn't considered that use case in our original development, but that's something we're working to get better supported, and enhancing our local context adaptability. We're continuing to work with user co-designs, and hope that this rubric generation tool will be a significant step forward to making fair, efficient, and impactful assessment practices standard in classrooms. So yeah, thank you all for having us here, and I'm really looking forward to talking more in the breakout rooms.
Thank you. We have a few more that we want to make sure we highlight here. So next up, we have scaffolding creativity or homogenizing outputs from ChatGPT virtual TAs, impact on student ideations of graduate education. I think I saw Matma. There's so many names in here. I'm not sure if it's Matma or Needy that's going to be speaking, but either of you can jump off.
Thanks, Katrina. Yes, Nidhi and I are both here. Hi, good day, everyone. Not sure what part of the day you're joining us from, but I hope you're having a good day. My name is Mamta Shah, and I'm an instructor in the Graduate School of Education, mostly teaching courses in the Learning Sciences and Technologies program. And today I have with me one of my co-authors, Nidhi, but we also have two other authors who cannot make it today, Ryan Baker and Maciej Pankiewicz. Let me give you a little bit of context to our paper. So for many years, I've studied game-based learning, and one of the challenges that we've faced is to help educators in whatever capacity be able to creatively repurpose different kinds of games for educational use, particularly commercial entertainment games, which are very well designed in many contexts, such as Minecraft, which is the focus of our paper here, but also just helping, also like one of the challenges is how do we help educators build sufficient knowledge about a game, which are so complex, which sometimes also are procedurally generated. So you cannot know everything about the game, but how do we build enough knowledge and provide enough support for them to be able to propose creative applications of the game in educational settings for different learning goals. So that's sort of the broad premise. And the course in which I've been playing with this idea is a course on games and learning, which I've been teaching for 5 years, but this has been offered for many, many years. And parallelly, we developed GPT, a virtual LLM-powered teaching assistant at the Penn Center for Learning Analytics. So there was an opportunity for me to use GPT in this course and to see how was it helping students with different levels of knowledge of Minecraft propose different kinds of educational applications using the game. And we examined using a quasi-experimental setup. As I said, I've taught this course for many years, so I do have data from previous years as well to know when students did not have access to a tool like GPTA and had opportunities, the same kind of opportunities to build their knowledge of Minecraft, the kinds of activities they proposed versus when they had a tool like GPTA, how did that support their creative ideation? And we see that students with even some basic level of game knowledge were positioned to come up with some level of fully formed ideas with support of GPTA. And GPTA really was beneficial for those students that had that knowledge of the game and had a detailed idea about where that game could be fitting within specific learning objectives. For those students that were relying solely on GPTA, students came up with many ideas, but they were often very trivial in their nature, versus those when students had sufficient knowledge of the game, knew what they wanted to use the game for. GPTA truly was a equal partner in creating fully formed ideas, helping the student even think about structured learning activities, reframing the use of the game. So I'll pause here, but it's very fascinating for me to now see how tools like GPTA can really offer some sort of a shoulder to educators who want support in the laborious process of developing game knowledge and be able to use these games for educational settings. I'll pause here for a moment. Nidhi, if you're still around, is there something you'd like to say? Just going to see if Nidhi's here.
Well, she can absolutely contribute in the breakout.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably move on at this point. Just to introduce our last two authors and then go into the breakout. So I'm excited to introduce my amazing colleague, Bodong Chen, with the team wrote our authors of the article, Pedagogical Biases in AI-Powered Educational Tools, the Case for Lesson Plan Generators. Bodong.
Great, thank you, Michael. It's such an honor to join such a wonderful group of people from all different walks of life. So I really appreciate this opportunity. And my name is Bodong Chen. I'm the faculty member at Penn GSE from the Learning Sciences and Technologies program. I'm joined by our wonderful graduate researchers, Jiayu Chen and Chen Wang, who were also co-authors of this paper. And to be really brief, our paper asks a very simple question. As you know, as AI gets integrated in education system, we ask, are there any biases we need to be aware of? I think the short answer is yes. But in the meantime, some of you might question, this is so boring. We have been talking about biases for so long. Like, we know that AI is biased against some group of people, such as English language learners and so on. Why you're talking about biases here? And for our paper, we're very focused on one type of biases that we call pedagogical biases. And the reason we choose to do that is we think those are relevant and super relevant to education. And those pedagogical biases are where a lot of our educators' expertise and judgment can play a big role to mitigate or to improve. So just to give you a quick snapshot of the paper, we focus on lesson plan generators because they are very popular. They are widely used in our schools already. And we are wondering, as we have our educators, or even myself sometimes, use AI to generate lesson designs, are there biases we need to be aware of? And also further, how can we deploy some practical strategies so educators can take actions to hopefully impose their own judgment or their own biases. Sometimes biases are not always negative, but can be also good and beneficial for education. So we analyzed a bunch of lesson plan generated from AI using different platforms. And we analyzed especially two different dimensions. One is about student agency, which means do those lesson plans display any hope or any disposition to encourage students to take ownership of their learning. Another dimension we focus on is about classroom dialogue, which is about whether those lesson plan generated organize the classroom learning around the teacher's instruction, which means a monologue instruction, or there are actually cases where the teacher are trying to engage student in some conversations, right? Those are the two dimensions we focus on. And the findings show a lot of the lesson plan generated either using ChatGPT or using commercial tools are very teacher-centered and often monologue instruction. And the purpose of doing this is not really to criticize any companies or any AI tools, but is to highlight this is something I think where we can collaborate on by bringing educators into this space and play a very active role to shape how AI can be embedded in our instruction, in our educational practice. To highlight that, what Jason, the point made by Jason earlier is, it is really about people. It is about also thinking about how the organizational culture could be reconfigured and reinvented so that we can retain the most valuable, most important commitment in education as we're introducing AI to even improve education further. So that's a snapshot. And if you have questions or if you want to chat more, I look forward to the breakout room discussions.
Thank you, Bodong. And last and definitely not least is Josh Wilson tackling his article, Will AI Undermine or Support Writing and Critical Thinking?
Thank you, Katrina, and thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. As Katrina said, my name is Joshua Wilson. I'm from the University of Delaware, and my article just asks a simple, or not so simple, but certainly critical question. Will generative AI make us lazier thinkers, or can it deepen the kinds of reasoning that writing specifically is meant to cultivate? Why did I pick writing? Well, I am a sort of writing researcher. My research has focused on ways to improve the teaching and learning of writing with the use of technology, specifically automated technologies like automated writing evaluation and now generative AI. So the question is, looking at AI and critical thinking from the lens of how writing supports that. So we know that writing and critical thinking are connected. So the article starts with discussing that connection and establishing that connection between writing and critical thinking, with the former, writing, being the principal means by which we sort of develop in students, the latter. Certainly not the only, but a principal means. I then discuss how certain classic models of writing development, such as the simple view of writing and the knowledge transformation framework, emphasize that effective writers are able to manage cognitive constraints. If too much cognitive energy is focused on, for example, mechanical aspects or syntactic aspects of writing, there's less cognitive energy and resources available to manage the reflection and consideration of knowledge and ideas in relation to the task and audience and purpose of writing. And that reflection and consideration is where insight and knowledge is transformed, critical thinking is made. So good writers are able to balance and offload those constraints. Generative AI tools sit exactly at that junction. Early automated writing evaluation programs supported the offloading of mechanical aspects, but today's large language models can offload potentially not only those lower levels, but even the higher levels. They can draft, reorganize, critique ideas, generate ideas, do the whole thing for you if you're so inclined to use it that way. Alternatively, if they're used well, they could do the job where they free up cognitive resources, promote internal reflection, even dialogic back and forth that produces new insights. But used poorly, they can short circuit mental struggle. So in the article, I highlight 3 risks and then offer which are over-reliance on generative AI, hidden biases, which we've talked about, and unequal access to generative AI that may widen educational gaps. Against those risks, I propose a 3-part response, which is AI literacy as a core curricular outcome. Students must learn to question, revise, and fact-check AI output. Professional learning for educators so that teachers can model strategic, reflective uses of generative AI rather than blanketly prohibit it or support an uncritical adoption. And finally, and most importantly, a cross-sector collaboration among developers, researchers, and policymakers to embed ethical guardrails. A major issue now is that a lot of the most widely used generative AI tools, such as like ChatGPT, are not made with education in mind. You can use them that way, but if they were made by an educator, when you said, write this paper for me, would an educator ever allow it to say, sure, I'll do that for you? No educator would do that. it would say, well, it sounds like you might need some help with that. How can we work together to do this? And I think people are working to build those applications, but the much more conscious thought of the educational guardrails, not as a sort of for educational safety. So I conclude the article being optimistic but conditional, that we can strengthen critical thinking if we treat it as a cognitive partner, not a shortcut. But the real challenge is cultural, going back to what one of the other authors said, I think it was Jason. We need to really think about aligning incentives in education, industry, and policy so that efficiency never eclipses intellectual rigor and the development of critical thinking. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. We failed miserably in having these 2-minute introductions, but we learned a lot from each other, and I think the conversation will be even more robust. I think we're about to go into our breakout rooms. I think there've been some questions about recording, and this recording will be shared afterwards. And I think Nicolas has put in the chat that there are 3 groups. Do you want to tell us about them and
Yes.
help us
So
move through the breakouts?
there's group 1, AI-driven personalization and adaptive learning. There's group 2, AI for educational systems, evaluation and policy. And then group 3, AI, creativity, and the future of learning. I will open up the breakout rooms, and you can see above the authors that will be in each room. You will have about a minute to choose which one you want, and then you will be randomly assigned. Just press the breakout button and just choose which one. If you have any technical issues, just write which one you want to be in the chat, and I'll do my best to assign you to that room. So with that, we've got 25 minutes. Are we ready to go? Just thumbs up, and then we can go right in. So we will see you all in 25 minutes. Take care.
Awesome. Well, I think all that's left is just for expressing some gratitude and some closing remarks. So
Aren't you going to summarize what happened in your conversation in your room in three pithy sentences?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I wouldn't do it justice, and I know that. So I will say that I appreciated the conversation in our room, and I'm sure it happened in every room. That it ended on a final note of the reality that we are all experts in this space, and we are learning as we go because this is changing technology constantly. So I really appreciate that. I also just appreciate our authors for offering up not only their empirical articles, but their personal experiences, which can also be a very vulnerable space. So I think that was what makes this edition really powerful. And I will let you have your final thoughts, Michael.
Okay, thanks, Katrina. I agree. Kudos to all our authors. Amazing articles. Thanks to Katrina and in assembling such a broad array of voices, some very practical, some very academic, and everything in between. I think in our group, we talked quite a bit about where research plays a role, and a shout out to many of you who are in research institutions who are working on the cutting edge of that, and also where practice matters. And so thank you to all the practitioners who joined us today as you're thinking about the very varied and multiple aspects of AI and the tensions and the possibilities. We talked in our group about culture and policy and pedagogy and practice. I think we talked about addressing misconceptions. We definitely talked about the role of leadership and readiness, and certainly quality, pace, and time, where technology sometimes is outpacing people's ability to take on that change. So with all those things in mind, we look forward to continuing to collaborate with all of you to have the conversation keep going. Please feel free to reach out to us at info@just-a-catalyst@PennGSE, or any of us on this call. Across all of PennGSE and on behalf of all of my Catalyst colleagues, we look forward to continuing the collaboration and making sure we're understanding where you're coming from and how we can do this work together. Katrina just did put in there, we have an innovation summit coming up on June 6th in person here on campus. So please join us for that day. We'll hear the moniker of technology in many forms, including AI. And again, gratitude in this very busy and challenging time for all of those of you who took the time to write these awesome articles and share them with the world. Nicolas, over to you.
Yes, thank you all so much. An edited version of this recording will be sent out tomorrow for those of you who wish to revisit, or for those who are unable to make it today. I do encourage you to read the edition at socialinnovationsjournal.com, and you are always feel free to reach out to myself at Nikolai@socialinnovationspartners.org, or anyone else on the call. But the rest of you, have a great rest of your Thursday, Friday, and weekend. We look forward to seeing you all in future Meet the Authors. Take care.
Thank you.